When we talk about trust in a relationship, the very first thing we need to understand is that trust is not built in a single dramatic moment. It is not one big gesture, one big gift, or even one major promise kept. Trust is built in the smallest, quietest acts of consistency. It is not glamorous, and it is not always noticed in the moment, but over time, consistency becomes the invisible thread that holds people together. Think about it for a second. When you trust someone, it's rarely because of a single thing they did once. It's because they kept showing up the same way over and over again until your heart began to relax in their presence. It's because you knew deep down that their words and their actions lined up. Human beings are wired to look for patterns. Our brains are always scanning for signals of safety, for signs of stability. When someone is unpredictable, when they say one thing but do another, our natural response is to protect ourselves, to pull back, to hesitate. But when someone is consistent, when they match their behavior to their words, that is when we begin to lean in and allow ourselves to trust. Consistency is, in many ways, the language of security. A person who shows up for you repeatedly, even in small ways, communicates something very powerful. You can count on me. And it doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be as simple as returning a message when you said you would, showing respect even in moments of anger, or following through on promises, no matter how small they seem. The truth is, people remember the little things. Those little signals of reliability create a sense of predictability, and predictability makes people feel safe. Without that, trust cannot exist. But let's also be honest here, consistency is hard. Life is unpredictable. We get tired, we get busy, we make mistakes. And yet, that's exactly why consistency matters so much. Because when everything else in life feels uncertain, the people who can show up steadily become rare, and rare things are valuable. Consistency doesn't mean perfection. It doesn't mean you never fail or never forget. It means you own your mistakes when they happen. You acknowledge the gap between what you promised and what you delivered, and then you take responsibility to repair it. That kind of consistency, owning up, making it right, and continuing to show up, is what separates fragile trust from resilient trust. Philosophically, you can think of consistency as a kind of moral rhythm. Just as music becomes meaningful through rhythm, relationships become meaningful through repeated patterns of care, honesty, and reliability. If you've ever listened to a song where the beat kept dropping unexpectedly, you know how unsettling it feels. You can't relax. You can't predict what's coming next. But when the rhythm is steady, when it holds its shape, you can lose yourself in it. Relationships are no different. People need rhythm, not chaos. They need a sense of knowing that tomorrow you will still be who you claim to be today. Psychologically, this need for consistency ties back to our deepest human fears: fear of abandonment, fear of betrayal, fear of being let down. These fears are universal, and they often stem from past experiences where trust was broken. So when someone consistently proves themselves dependable, they are not just keeping promises, they are actually healing those fears. They are building a bridge strong enough for two people to walk across together without the constant worry that it might collapse. And here's where it gets even more interesting. Consistency also builds trust with yourself. Every time you keep your word, every time you show up the way you intended, you reinforce your own self-respect. You begin to trust your own ability to be reliable. And that self-trust spills outward into your relationships. People sense it. They can feel when you are living in alignment with your own standards, and it naturally inspires them to trust you, because trust, after all, is contagious. So if you want to build trust in any relationship, romantic, professional, or personal, the question is not, what big gesture can I make? The real question is, how can I align my daily actions with my words again and again until consistency becomes my character? That is the quiet work that changes everything. At the end of the day, people don't remember what you said as much as they remember how safe they felt with you. Safety is the product of consistency. Without it, trust dies. With it, trust grows so strong that it can endure storms, challenges, and even mistakes. Consistency is the soil in which trust takes root. And so I leave you with this thought. If you want someone to believe in you, don't try to impress them once. Prove yourself every day in the small things, because trust is not built in promises spoken, but in promises kept. If consistency creates the foundation of trust, then communication is the bridge that allows two people to meet in the middle. You can be reliable in your actions, but if you cannot communicate honestly, if you cannot express what you truly feel or listen to what the other person needs, then that foundation will remain silent, unused, even wasted. Communication is not just about talking, it is about connection. And without that connection, trust cannot breathe. When I say honest communication, I don't mean saying everything that comes to mind without filter. That's not honesty, that's recklessness. True honesty has two sides: expression and respect. It's about expressing what's real inside of you while also respecting the reality of the person standing across from you. It's about creating a space where both truths can exist side by side without fear of judgment or rejection. One of the greatest mistakes we make in relationships is assuming that the other person should just know what we feel. We expect them to read our silence, to interpret our moods, to guess our needs. But human beings are not mind readers. When we leave things unsaid, we don't preserve harmony. We plant seeds of misunderstanding. Over time, those unspoken words grow into doubts, insecurities, and resentment. That is how trust erodes silently, not through betrayal in one moment, but through neglect in many. Psychologically, communication is the mechanism through which we regulate closeness. Neuroscience shows us that the brain is wired for connection, and honest dialogue activates that wiring. When someone listens to you without judgment, your nervous system relaxes. Your body feels safe. Your mind opens. That's not just emotional, it's biological. And when you offer that same listening presence to another person, you give them the gift of safety, which is the very essence of trust. But here's the challenge: honesty is uncomfortable. It requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels risky. To admit you're hurt, to confess you're afraid, to say what you really want, these are not easy acts. They make you feel exposed, almost naked in front of the other. And yet, it is precisely in that exposure where real intimacy lies. Trust cannot grow in the shadows of half-truths. It can only grow in the light of vulnerability. Philosophically, you could say that communication is an act of courage. It is the courage to reveal yourself, knowing you may not always be met with agreement. But trusting that authenticity is better than pretense. Imagine two people both wearing masks. There is no real relationship there, only an exchange between illusions. But when even one person dares to remove the mask and speak truthfully, they create an opening for the other to do the same. That is how genuine trust begins. Now, let's be clear, honest communication is not just about speaking, it's also about listening. In fact, listening might be the higher form of honesty, because when you listen without preparing your rebuttal, without rushing to defend yourself, you are essentially saying, your truth matters, even if it is different from mine. That level of listening builds bridges where walls used to stand. It communicates, you are safe to be fully yourself here. And once a person feels safe to be themselves, trust becomes inevitable. In practical terms, building trust through communication means practicing transparency. It means clarifying your intentions before assumptions take root. It means checking in when something feels off, instead of letting silence create its own story. And it means being willing to sit in difficult conversations without running away or shutting down. Because often, it's not the difficulty of the topic that breaks trust, it's the avoidance of it. We must also recognize that honesty in communication is not just a gift to the other person, it is a form of self-respect. Every time you silence your voice to keep the peace, you may win temporary comfort, but you lose a piece of yourself. Over time, that loss builds into frustration, even bitterness. And bitterness is the silent enemy of trust. By contrast, when you speak your truth respectfully, you affirm your own dignity. And that self-respect is the very energy that makes others respect and trust you in return. So ask yourself, when was the last time you communicated with complete honesty? When was the last time you listened not just to the words, but to the emotions beneath them? When was the last time you created a space where both you and the other person could be fully human, flawed, vulnerable, but real? Because those are the moments that transform a relationship from fragile to unbreakable. At the end of the day, trust is not built through perfection, but through connection. And connection is impossible without honest communication. If consistency gives people something to count on, communication gives them something to hold on to. Together, they form the heartbeat of trust. And so I leave you with this: honesty may feel risky, but silence is far riskier. Speak your truth, listen with respect, And you will discover that the shortest path to trust is not through perfection, but through openness.